There is one button we haven't explored here yet, and it's the Options button. So if we click on it, we get the Report Options dialog, and here we have two areas, the date and time and the other options. Under date and time, we have report date and report time. Well, these two are used as a base time and base date for the wildcards, and we are going to review the wildcards in a minute. The idea is that every time the report document is run, the same date and the same time are used. When do we want to use this? For example, if I know my shifts go from 8 a.m. to noon every single day, I can define here my report time as 8 a.m. So every time that I run this report, the report time will be 8 a.m. And under the other options, we have the suppress messages when report is running, the use date and time wildcards, so we are going to enable that one to test our wildcards functionality, and the maximum rows per query, which is going to limit how many records can be retrieved by your query. Now let's talk about the wildcards. There are two types of wildcards, for date and for time. And basically they are going to be used when you need to create a recurrent report that covers the same period every time. The first one is the pound time, and it is used to represent the current date, that means today. And in this example, we are using it to define a time period for which we want to retrieve data. So in this case, this query is going to retrieve data from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now, why 9 a.m.? Because we are saying 5 p.m. minus 8 hours. That is 9 a.m. Now, the second one is pound date. And pound date is used to represent a specific date in the query. Which specific date? Whatever we define on the report date on the options. So if we go back and check in our configuration, here I have a report date. And this report date is the one that is going to be used by my pound date wildcard. So for example, here we are using it again to define a period for the query. And instead of using time, which is today, we are using a date that is specified there in the options. So it can be January 1st of 2014. And again from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The third one is the pound report time. And this one is not about dates. This one is specifically about the time of the day. And where do we define this variable? Again, under the options menu on the report time field. So in this example, we are using it to define again the period for the query, and we are using today as the date and whatever we have defined in the report time as the time. This report time can be used with today's date or with any other date, meaning with pound time or with pound date. Now, to be able to use these wildcards, we need to check that box under the options menu. So we go here to the options button, we get the report options dialog, and we have here under other options the use date time wildcards. So we're going to check that one. And I'm going to leave the report date as it is, and the report time I'm going to change it for 5 p.m. today. Click OK. So now let's create a report. So I click here on Insert Query. I'm going to call the client query. And here I will select history values for my reactor temperature and my reactor level. I'm going to change the time for the last 2 hours. The format to use white query format. Click OK. Here I have the query. Now notice that the period for this query is defined using the function getDate. GetDate actually reads the current date and time of the system. So I'm gonna click OK. And we get the additional time options dialog box. This one is popping up because we enable the wildcards. And here we have two options. Yes, insert wildcards for query execution relative to a fixed time, or no, do not insert wildcards. So yes, I want to insert the wildcards. And then we can define which values we want for those wildcards. For date, you can use the date when the report is run, or you can use a date as specified in the report options. I'm going to leave that one. And for the time, you can specify the time here, or we can leave the time specified in report options. I'm going to leave that one, click OK, and here I have the query. Now notice that here I have my wildcards. It says pound date report time, and here I have also a pound date report time. This one is actually the beginning of the query, so it's pound date report time minus 2h, because remember, we changed the duration to 2 hours. So now let's run the report. I'm not going to save it for now. And here we have it. This is our data using the wildcards for time and date. So let's have some practice with this in the next lab.